Hello and welcome to a new edition of Everybody Hates Your Brand, the podcast for all things marketing, from brand to customer experience. And in this episode, we launch hopefully a long-running feature, our very own Room 101. So I was thinking about a topic for this podcast, and I was inspired by a feature in Marketing Week. You should always give credit where credit's due, not take ideas for yourself. So there we go. The feature, which I've linked in the podcast notes, had some of marketing's sort of great and good, adding things to a Marketing Room 101. Now, if you're not familiar, Room 101 is introduced in the novel 1984 by George Orwell. It's a torture chamber in which a prisoner is subjected to their own worst nightmare, fear, or phobia, or, in quotes, the worst thing in the world. Grim, you might think, and not the subject of a podcast, but the feature I'm talking about more closely refers to the long-running, I think, primarily British, radio and TV comedy panel show in which celebrities are invited to discuss their pet hates, and they have to persuade the host to consign those hates to oblivion in Room 101, never to be seen and to be subject to their own worst thing in the world. So our goal today is to start populating Room 101. Now, I've been doing this a long time. By this, I'm in marketing, and anyone who knows me will know that I have a lot of pet hates in marketing and business in general. And today, I'm adding 4 things into Room 101. This will probably become a regular feature because I've got lots. But more importantly, I would love to hear your pet peeves, and will be the judge of whether or not they should go into Everybody Hates Your Brand's very own Room 101. I'm going to leave details on how to contact me in the show notes, whether that's through Twitter or LinkedIn or other options. So I'm hopeful this should be a fun feature. Any new interviewees are going to come on the panel. I'm going to ask them this question: what would be the one thing they would put into Room 101? And we'll have a discussion about whether it goes in or not. Probably will, knowing me. But without any more waffling, let's get on to the first entry. Entry number 1, objectives that aren't really objectives. Now, this will come as no surprise again to anybody who has spent any time with me in my career. I swear to God, nobody seems to know what an objective is anymore, whether it's agency or client side. I've seen objectives like, we want to be connected to our customers. We want to have highly engaged customers. We want to create a better purchase experience. We want to build a best-in-class loyalty program. I am hoping you can see the problem. None of those are objectives. Not one of them. They're tactics or strategies, in most cases, ill-defined ones, but still, they are things you do for a reason. You are hoping that they increase purchase frequency. Maybe they reduce churn. Maybe they increase mental availability. Maybe they just make it easier. And by making it easier to purchase, you increase, transactional value, whatever it might be. But I see it all the time. People putting strategies and tactics as objectives. So, for the love of God and for my blood pressure, always ask why. If you find yourself writing down those types of things as an objective, why do you want to be connected? Defining connected would be a good fucking start. But anyway, why do you want to build a loyalty program? Why do you want a better purchase experience? Might be obvious in some cases, but writing that down and asking yourself that question why is so important. If you can answer the question, you actually get to what is your objective? Are you trying to increase mental availability, transactional frequency, reduce churn, whatever it might be? And I know the SMART thing, the acronym SMART, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic and time-based, I think it is, out of memory, is a well-worn cliche. No, but that's because it's true. So let's say you do want to increase average transaction frequency as objective. Okay, from what to what? And how long are you giving yourself? Is that reasonable and achievable based on past history? And how are you going to measure it? It seems like such a simple thing, yet it stymies so many people when they're writing objectives. Please, for the love of God, stop it. And I'm going to formally induct objectives that aren't objectives into, as the first entry, into Everybody Hates Your Brand's very own Room 101. Entry number 2, phase 2 of projects. If anyone tells you that the key feature that you really want for your new product or customer experience is going to have to be pushed into phase 2, 9 times out of 10, in my experience, you can forget it. Phase 2 is where features go to die. They get shunted there, even if they were in phase 1 originally, because maybe it's hard to do. Maybe it'll take up too much time given the launch date of said project. Maybe there's this, we'll get on this one later, I think, there's a pernicious drive to sort of just get something out. Just got to hit a date. And, infuriatingly, 9 times out of 10, it's usually the best bloody features, the ones that are actually going to make a difference. But as a result, maybe are a little bit harder to do. There's a reason this happens. There's a reason phase 2 doesn't happen, a bunch of different stuff. So maybe, sometimes by the time phase 2 is supposed to happen, the business will have pivoted and investment will be going somewhere else.
Hey guys, I just had a thought. Okay, so this is it, right? A lot of successful startups launched with a different business model. And when they ran into trouble, they pivoted to something new, right? Like Instagram, that was a location-based check-in service when it started, and then they pivoted. Or chat roulette, okay? That was social media, and then they pivoted to become a playground for the sexually monstrous. We just need a new idea, something that people want, right? We can pivot to.
Or the people who promised to do it have left, and the new person won't. Or the money runs out. So what do you do? And it's here, as in most things in life, I like to quote Agent Peggy Carter of S.H.I.E.L.D. Compromise where you can. Where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say, no, you move. Might be a little bit dramatic, maybe. Potentially there, but still, the principle stands. If something is useful for the customer and integral to the experience, it needs to be there from day one. I implore you to fight for that, because if you don't, phase 2, it's a graveyard. Trust me. Be careful. Also, I'd like there's the idea of MVPs. We're just going to put an MVP out and done properly, which is launching something that addresses a real need, and you improve on that iteratively. They're great. But in my experience, there's too much emphasis put on the minimum and not enough on the viable, and something's launched and it's crap and it doesn't meet core customer needs, and that can damage perceptions when you start to try and iterate and improve over time. So the phase 2 of projects I'm shunting into Room 101. Number 3, the phrase, we just need to get something out. I have mentioned this previously in relation to the phase 2 graveyard conversation. I cannot count the number of times in over 20 years of doing this where I've heard some variation of those words. Could be from a client, could be from an internal stakeholder. It never gets less annoying. I'm actually clenching my fist right now to give you an idea. It's annoying because what it does is turn marketing into something to be ticked off a to-do list rather than something being guided by a thoughtful or a well-designed strategy. And it's an excuse to hide lazy thinking or someone's lack of knowledge and skill in delivering something maybe a bit complex. And you add all that up and you end up with a couple of things. Firstly, you end up with sort of bland, boring, ineffective, and potentially damaging marketing. Damaging, I hear you say. Well, yeah, look at direct marketing. Just get it out. Email marketing specifically, but also direct mail and SMS, actually all of them. Just get it out leads to no or bad personalization. It leads to spam. It leads to no experimentation. It leads to accepting crappy targeting or creative. And to run that to its logical endpoint, things like GDPR in Europe and PECR, or hilariously PECA in Europe, are a direct reaction to this. We're reaping what we sowed by having the just get something out attitude. Secondly, it leads to this weird thing where companies only end up moving forwards and not taking the time to look backwards at what they've done, because they're just focused on them doing the next thing. By bias for action might be in a future Room 101. So we're not sharks, we're not going to drown if we stop swimming. So again, I think, we can't always be perfect. And sometimes it happens. I get it. Sometimes maybe your agency side and a client's like, we can't do all that. We haven't got, we haven't got the money or the targeting capability or whatever it is. We just need to do something. At a certain point, you just kind of go, okay, fine. But if that attitude is constant and it always happens, you're doing your marketing an injustice. Sometimes marketing is hard and complex and frustrating, but stick with it rather than compromising what makes it effective. And number 4, the word engagement. That word drives me up the fucking wall. One of my biggest bugbears is the use of the word engagement in marketing, primarily because it's never defined. It's just banded around as some sort of positive outcome. What is engagement? Is it buying from you? Is it clicking on an email? Is it liking your post? Is it leaving a review? And over what period? We're getting back into the objectives thing. See, it all kind of ties together. I keep hearing that, well, our client, our customers are so engaged with us. They're so engaged with this, so engaged with that. What does it mean? And what value does it bring you once you've defined what it is? I think it is used lazily. I think it is used as a kind of catch-all term when measurement hasn't been done properly. Use it if you can define it with clarity and you can measure it with clarity. The other thing is, I think it's a phrase that only marketing people use. And if you start trying to convince finance that you're doing the right thing because we've got great engagement, it's like, oh, come on, what is that? Is that making me any money or not? The lesson here is simple. The word means nothing unless you define it. So the next time someone uses it, please ask them to clarify what they mean. And never use it yourself unless you're sure you know what it means, why it's useful, and can express it to others. So number 4 into Room 101 is the word engagement. So that's it. I'm going to stick with 4 for now. As you can probably hear from my voice, there are a lot of other ones I would like to add. But just to recap, the 4 things that have gone into Room 101 currently are objectives that aren't actually objectives, the phase 2 of projects, the phrase, we just need to get something out, and the damage that it causes, and lastly, but not least, the use of the word engagement. That kind of wraps up those 4. As I've said, I have many more of these. And it's bloody therapeutic talking about them. So I appreciate you listening to me rant. But as I said before, I would also love to adjudicate yours. So please get in touch. Please let me know what are the things that drive you crazy about marketing. Could be just business in general. Anything that drives you completely bonkers that you want to put into Room 101, please get in touch, and we'll use this hopefully as an ongoing feature in the podcast. Okay, so I wanted to add a couple of new features, especially when we don't have an interviewee, which sort of takes up usually most of the podcast. And I wanted to add something that I thought would be of value. So I've come up with a new feature, which also allows me to have a cheesy, alliteratively named feature, which is called Rob Recommends. I need a jingle. Anyone who wants to write one, let me know. So what I want to do here is share things that I use every day that are useful to me from a marketing perspective, whether that's as a planner in an agency or as a head of marketing or head of CM at the client side, or wherever you are, something that's going to add value to you and that I'm a believer in myself. So the first thing I recommend you do from Rob's Recommends is to sign up to Bob Hoffman's newsletter. Now, Bob is, I'm saying like we're on first name terms, we're demonstrably not, but still, Mr. Hoffman is a writer and speaker. He's written 5 books about advertising, each of which has been an Amazon #1 bestseller. He's one of the most sought after sort of international speakers on advertising and marketing. Most importantly to me, he's been the chief executive of 2 independent ad agencies and the US operation of an international agency. Creative, I believe, was his kind of where he came up through, but ended up running agencies. And so obviously knows what he's talking about. And it's fine and dandy. It gives him some credibility. But what I love about him more than anything is that he is a marketing curmudgeon. And I do like a marketing curmudgeon, as you may have gathered from this podcast. He gives very straight talking answers in black and white, specifically on today's sort of marketing problems with a real fixation on a few different topics. One, the sort of vagaries and the opaqueness and the lack of transparency in digital advertising and Facebook specifically. Another is the nonsense of sort of the fixation of youth in advertising and marketing departments, and how ridiculous that is given who actually has the money. He is provocative and interesting and very, very readable. And you don't just have to take my word for it. Professor Byron Sharp, author of How Brands Grow, said of him, I quote, "I'm jealous. I wish I was brave enough to be this rude." And if you follow Byron Sharp on Twitter, that's saying something. Here are a couple of fabulous quotes from his newsletters to whet your appetite. I won't do the American accent because it's a terrible, terrible American accent. Here we go. "Of all the industries that never learn anything, my vote for the dumbest goes to the auto industry. It doesn't matter how many times they try the same stupid strategy and fail, they never learn. The strategy in question is, of course, let's target young people. It never works, but it is the knee-jerk strategy for every new product from every automaker in captivity. The latest example is Lexus. They have a new SUV, the NX, which they are targeting to young, quote-unquote, creative visionaries," he writes, "someone shoot me," in brackets here, "with all kinds of hip media horseshit. The only problem is the average luxury SUV buyer is 53 years old." It gives you a bit of a taste. I'll give you one last one on digital advertising. The quote begins, "As regulators, legislators, and the public are starting to understand and react to the unprecedented damage that online tracking and surveillance are doing to individual privacy and democratic institutions, there is still one group of shitheads who totally don't get it: the digital marketing industry." Apologies to anybody listening. This is his words, not mine. In a survey by Epsilon and Phronesis partners, among over 250 digital marketers talking about the expected demise of third-party cookies, they found that 70% of digital marketers believe that by eliminating third-party cookies, the industry is quote-unquote heading in the wrong direction. What planet are these squids living on? To be clear, opinions expressed by Bob Hoffman do not necessarily correlate with the opinions of the Everybody Hates Your Brand podcast, to be absolutely clear. I do think there's something in some of those quotes, but they are probably slightly more robustly worded than maybe I would have said them. So highly recommend you sign up to his podcast, his website, even if you do it just for a contrary view than your own. It's worth having a listen. So I highly recommend it. The link to his newsletter is in the and his website actually are in the podcast notes. So that's it for this one. Kept this one relatively short and snappy. Thank you for making it through to the end if you have done. Don't forget to send me the things that you are desperate to put into Room 101. I am really excited to hear what people come up with. And I'm also really excited to ask, I've got a couple of interviews coming up, those people as to what they would love to put into Room 101 and have a discussion about it. I think it's a fun, cathartic experience. So anyway, thank you very much for listening and see you on the next one. And as my mother always says, take great, great care and be vigilant.